Oli here, and this is my review of The Demons, the fifth and final story of the eighth season of classic Doctor Who, starring John Pertwee as the third Doctor. The Demons is the 59th story overall. It's 5 episodes long and is written by Barry Latz, and making his Doctor Who writing debut, Robert Sloman, but he wrote this under the pseudonym of Guy Leopold. So, after the Doctor's first interplanetary adventure since his exile, he's now back on Earth, and the plot of The Demons is as follows. In the peaceful village of Devil's End, something very strange is happening. A professor is preparing to open a nearby burial mound, and a local white witch foresees death and disaster. Meanwhile, the new vicar looks suspiciously like the master, and he is using black magic to conjure up an ancient demon. Can the Doctor during a unit stop their old enemy before he succeeds? And that is the plot of The Demons. In my opinion, The Demons is a fantastic story, and a lot of Whovians would actually say that The Demons is actually one of Pertwee's greatest stories, and I can understand why, but I do think that The Demons does have a few faults which actually affects the story, but compared to 14 other stories, it actually does affect the story quite a lot. It's not that major, but if without these faults, it probably made the story even better. I would even probably have called it a perfect 10, for instance. So before I got onto these faults, I want to talk about the aspects that made the story enjoyable. First off, the production, I would say, is very well done. I like how most of the action takes place in the village of Devil's End, and I really like the village itself. It really gave off those scary horrors it's set in Sleepy Rural Village films, and it was quite interesting. It was nice to see Doctor Who delve into that area, and I like the location filming of Devil's End. I can't remember where I think I was reading about it yesterday, but I can't remember where they say it was filmed. And then I like the picture, and I like the location filming and the picture issues that were in the early part of the story. It actually made the story quite scary, and I like the sets of the story as well, such as the village pub, the Devil's Hump, where Azal's spaceship was Azal's spaceship was, and the church where the master operated. Of this story, it was very 70s, but I do wish that they did maybe delve into orchestral music, or try and at least make the music a bit scary to try and give off the olden day horror movie vibes. I mean, I mean, understandably it's a sci-fi show, and I wish they actually did make the music a bit scarier. I like the Master's occult robe; it looked really cool, and the script of the story was absolutely brilliant. And I like the special effects as well that were used in the story, such as the gargoyle reappearing there and appearing there, and I would say Azal's when he first was summoned, well, when he was summoned in episode 4, and he was just suddenly growing, even though it did look a bit dodgy, but it does give some charm to it. And obviously, speaking of Bok, I like how the effects when Unit destroyed him with a bazooka and how he blew up, but obviously because of what was going on, Bok was reformed, and I actually liked how it was done. Obviously, it was done. They played the tea back of him blowing up in reverse, but it was still pretty cool to say the least. The Demons was directed by none other than the amazing Christopher Barry, and it's no surprise considering for the Christopher Barry has actually directed some of Doctor Who's grittier and darker stories, and he did get some very good stuff in there which I liked. The story's plot is marvelous, it's very creative, and this is actually the first time Doctor Who has actually dabbled in the occult and the supernatural. Although I was rather disappointed how all of this was just written off as merely scientific, and excuse me, I like supernatural and occult stuff like Charmed and whatever, but it was a bit disappointing to see have them just written off as just basic science. And but it was a nice tonal shift to Doctor Who, and we got some incredible moments of the story, such as the Kree Cry Cod scene, the Master summoning Azal, the Brigadier debuting his 5 runs rapid quote, and of course Joe defeating Azal. This story is also a great way to end season 8, and it's a great way to end the Master storyline of the season with him actually trying to get to one up of the Doctor every single story. And it's a good thing that the Master isn't actually killed off in the story, and he's actually carted off to a prison, and we don't see him again until season 9's The Sea Devils, which is actually the third story of the ninth season. And I also loved the ending when the Doctor was able to defeat the Master. The Master was sent to Ray to prison, and how they were all just dancing around the maple. And then I liked the bit when the Doctor said to Joe, "There really is magic in this world," and it was a very nice ending. I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old. I remember seeing this in UK on UK TV, or catching the ending of the Demons on UK TV Gold. Gold for those who grew up around that era. I mean, it was nice to see them just dancing around the maple, and it's a very nice scene because I remember doing something like this when I was in primary school. I think it was in year 2 or year 3 when I was like, yeah, so somewhere around that time. It was very. I actually did dance around the maple when I was in school. It was pretty cool to see, and I actually like how this Doctor are including like I'm not sure if it's an English tradition, but it was nice to see like all these traditional elements introduced into Doctor Who. So onto the performances of the actors, which I must say were absolutely brilliant. First of all, John Pertwee, he actually delivers one of his best performances as the Doctor in the story. I really liked how the Doctor was skeptic of the whole magic stuff and believed it as merely scientific. And obviously, the Doctor was right. Right, and it was actually very well done. And Pertwee actually captured that really well, and you can actually see John Pertwee actually liked working on this story. He even said that the Demons was his favorite story, and you can see why. And I think, especially in the Queequeg Court scene where he was about to be burnt by the stake by the landlord, and then Miss Hawthorne actually shows up and says that the Doctor is actually a wizard and he will harm you if you don't do anything. And the Doctor was demonstrating his powers by shattering lampposts and actually controlling Bessie with the remote control he used in episode 1. And the lamppost was thanks to Benton somewhere off in the back shooting at them and with a silencer, and he somehow got John shot a wind vane, which is pretty much impossible from where he was like here and was around there, and let's say the wind vane was like somewhere in the distance. I really don't know how the hell unless he has very good shooting skills thanks to unit, but it did look a bit weird to say the least. Another scene I liked was when the Doctor was like telling off Joe because Joe called the Brigadier stupid because he was about to do something which was actually rather silly, and then the Doctor was like, he is still your subordinate. I mean, so you do still work for him, and it's not nice to say all this stuff, considering that the Doctor was actually thinking the same thing, but he didn't really like it when Joe actually said that. So speaking of Joe, Katie Manning actually delivers a stellar performance as Joe Grant, and I really like Joe in the story, and this is the point in time with the Doctor where she actually comes to terms with her character development. And this is probably where the story actually cements her character development. And when Azal, towards the climax of the story, when Azal is about to kill the Doctor, and then because the Doctor refused to accept his powers, Jo pretty much stepped in to sacrifice herself to save the Doctor. And obviously, Azal cannot understand the whole act of human compassion and self-sacrifice, and it literally destroys him. That was great, considering that the villain of this story was defeated by someone like Jo, and I think it really gave her the confidence boost going into season 9. And then I think it definitely made Jo into a more fearless companion, not afraid to stand up to villains such as the Master, and how she's able to go off and do her own thing. She actually gets to do a lot in this story, and especially in the last 2 episodes, because for like the first 3 bits of the story he was away, and then when the whole situation at Devil's End occurs, he can't actually get into Devil's End because there was a heat barrier that was preventing him and Unit to enter. And when the barrier goes down, the Brigadier actually kicks ass, and this is where he comes up with his 5 rounds rapid lines to actually kill Bonk. And I would actually say this is one of Nicholas Courtney's best performances. Benton and Yates actually get to do some heavy lifting in the story, which I actually liked in the absence of the Brigadier not in Devil's End. I liked it when Benton was able to rescue Hawthorne when she was trapped inside one of the boxes in the church, and he actually gets into a fight with the Master's men. That was pretty cool, and I think they got to see Azal as well a bit. Yates actually gets to do some nice fight scenes, especially in that helicopter with that guy Tom Gurton, and then that was pretty good. I think he was one that actually was operating the helicopter when going into Devil's End before the heat barrier came. To say that the unit family are well utilized is actually an understatement. So on to the side characters, we were really impressed to say the least. First of all, we had Miss Hawthorne. She was the local white witch, and nobody other than the Doctor actually believed what was going on in Devil's End, but the Doctor actually does does actually dismiss Miss Hawthorne, saying that it's all the powers of the devil and stuff like that, and the Doctor actually is mainly scientific. And I like the scene. I think it was in episode 1 where she was. I think there was a bit of like in stormy weather going on, and then she was able to like calm it down when the local policeman was there. He was actually about to whack her with a rock, and then but he doesn't when he actually sees her like calm it down. And then I think Hawthorne might have actually known that he was gonna attack her, but it's a good thing he didn't actually go through with it. And Miss Hawthorne is actually one of my favorite side characters in the Poetry era, and Damaris Heyman played her very well. Second of all, we had Tom Gerton. He was a member of the Master's Coven, and he obviously served the Master, and he told the Master of the Doctor and Joe's arrival. He gets a good fight scene with Yates over the helicopter, and how I liked how when the Doctor and Joe were on Bessie, how he was pretty much trying to kill them on whilst he was in the helicopter, but he accidentally crashed and died. And that was a pretty good death. We had Bert the landlord. Judging by his name, he's obviously the landlord of the local Devils and Boozer, and he was another member of the Master's Coven. He was also responsible for wanting to burn the Doctor at the stake, but Hawthorne comes to the Doctor's rescue. Bert does get killed by Buck afterwards. Then we have Osgood. He's Sergeant Osgood. I think he was the one that built the thing to calm down the heat barrier that he made. But I think one of the first attempts didn't work, but the second attempt actually worked, and you don't actually see him shortly afterwards. And I wish he did come back for other stories also, because he was pretty cool. And then of course we have Bok. He's the gargoyle statue that came to life thanks to the Master, and I would say Bok is an interesting character because, or at least a minor side villain, because the way he gets to kill his victims was cool. Plus I liked his movements, how he just in there and you just over there. That was pretty creepy and cool at the same time. There are other side characters that I find interesting. Others were okay, but once again, these ones had the main focus and I actually liked. We have the Master as the villain again, and the last time he was enough adjudicator, and now he's posing as a local priest. But behind the scenes, he's running a coven summoning Azal. Roger Delgado, I'd say he's great in this story, and I would actually say that this is probably one of his best performances as the Master. The incantations he had to say were very well done. I was rather impressed with Delgado with what he did, and finally the Master gets his season-long comeuppance when UNIT finally arrests him, and there's no trickery involved, so he's actually carted off to prison, and we don't see him again until season 9. It was a relief to say the least, because we don't have to worry about the Master showing up again until later on in the season, later on in the John Pertwee era. And the second villain was Azal. He was the last living demon, and he placed himself in suspended animation for thousands of years. And then when the Master summoned him, he offers his powers to the Doctor, and they tried to kill the Doctor when the Doctor refused to accept the powers. And then he actually tried to kill. When he's about to kill the Doctor, Joe steps in his place, and then obviously, as I mentioned before, he doesn't understand what's going on. He actually dies. He doesn't actually fully show up until episode 5, and you can tell he's a great villain because you can tell that his actor Stephen Ford was really belting out his lines, and that was quite menacing to say the least. Thoughts I have of this story that prevented the Demons becoming a 10 out of 10. First off, I did think the story did drag in some places, especially when the Doctor was recovered from the Devil's Hump, and the conclusion of the story was rather rushed. I mean, the plot does suffer a small drag, but when it comes to the conclusion with Azal, having Joe being the one to defeat him, it was rather sudden. I mean, I would have made the Demons a 6-parter, so we can have episode 5 and a bit of 6 mainly focus on Azal, maybe having the Doctor and the Master trying to work together to defeat Azal, and then obviously the Master will become greedy, and then obviously that's how I'll put Joe. I'll still pretty much put the element of Joe wanting to sacrifice herself to save the Doctor, and still have Azal died there, but it was still interesting, but it's a bit rushed to say the least. So in my opinion, the Demons is a wonderful enjoyable highlight of the Pertwee era, and is definitely a must watch. Despite the faults this story has, it's still a charm to watch, and I think the charm can make you actually overlook these issues, and I give the Dæmons a 9 out of 10. So that is it for my reviews of Season 8. Join me next time where I'll be ranking all 5 stories of the 8th season, where Honor ranks 8. Thank you for watching this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And let me know what you thought of the Dæmons and this review. And until then, see you later.